people trust YouTube creators far more than any other creators on other platforms, and far more than celebrities, far more than politicians, far more than figures of authority, because...
Welcome to Connected Thinking, our series of chats with standout voices from the world of marketing, where we unpack what's trending, what's shifting, and what's coming next. I'm May, your host and managing director of Scene Connects. Today, I'm joined by Roya Zeitoune, head of culture and trends at YouTube for EMEA. She has spent nearly 15 years at Google, with 12 of those on YouTube. From undercover reporting for the BBC to founding an award-winning startup, her unconventional path now sees her decoding the internet's weird and wonderful video culture and helping others to understand it. Welcome, Roya.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
To kick things off, Roya, you recently spoke on a panel about how creators are redefining entertainment. What shifts are you seeing in the way that audiences choose to consume content and how creators are leading that change?
I think the shift has been absolutely monumental. If I think about the last 12 years that I've been tracking YouTube trends, and before that I was actually tracking Google trends, so it was kind of focused on YouTube as well. The change in the dynamic of how much is focused on creators now rather than brands or big studios is, I could never have predicted it 12 years ago. To the point where I was reading research recently about how for the majority of people, not just, Gen Z or whatever label you want to attach for younger people now, they are far more excited about creator releases and creator updates than they are now from like big Hollywood studios, etc., which is just mind-blowing, really, when you think that when YouTube started, no one knew what it was going to be and how much it has changed that to becoming really a hub of entertainment. And obviously my specialism is YouTube, love YouTube so much, but my team is a research team and we study the internet generally. So I can't claim all of this is just YouTube. Of course, it's happening on lots of platforms now, but really that shift towards the enormous fandoms that creators can have really did come through YouTube, just because we had first mover advantage, of course. And I love watching it. I find it so exciting when I see people anticipating a new release of something. Even if it's not creator-led in the traditional perspective of it, of just being one person. If you think about channels like, I don't know, Amazing Digital Circus, which was created by creators behind the scenes, but it's an animated series. The anticipation every time a new episode would come out was just enormous. And so I think, and that's true of so many different, channels that we have now, but I think what really fuels it is that halo on the ecosystem of not only do people wait for creators to make stuff, they talk about waiting for creators to make stuff, and it's other creators talking about that. So it's this whole self-feeding ecosystem that just makes the whole thing far more exciting than entertainment used to be back in the day.
You've got such a cool job title. I would love to know what a day in your life looks like and what you're responsible for.
Oh my gosh, I really do think it is the best job in the world. I'm so lucky with that. I mean, before I joined, I had done so many different things. I mean, you mentioned some of them. I'd done lots of other crazy things too. And I would change jobs every couple of years because I got bored. And would change completely, like radically. I was working in education advocacy for Save the Children and left there and had a dating startup, etc. So it was like really random things because I just wanted to do interesting stuff. YouTube is like a mirror onto the world, but it's also a window through which you can see the world. So you really, if you're interested in people and you're interested in anthropology, in popular culture, in politics, in history, in everything, there's just this enormous world to study every single day. I feel incredibly lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah. So what does your day look like? What are you doing?
First thing in the morning, we tend to, as a team, so I've got a team that they're based in lots of different countries across EMEA, but we sit within a global team where people are just all around the world, and we have group chats where people are constantly sharing things that are just fascinating. And because it's a global team, that never stops. So you get updates, I wake up and there have been things that have been shared from the night before, etc. So you get to see things all across different communities and different languages and different countries. So I usually spend the early part of my day trying to catch up on anything big that has happened everywhere. Because again, yes, I run EMEA, but EMEA doesn't operate in a vacuum. We are really, really connected to US trends, but we're also really influenced by, Latin American trends. And, there's a lot of Afro beats that come through, music, etc. And there's Indian trends now, because India is such a huge market for the internet. So, trying to catch up on everything is impossible, but I try and do my best at the beginning of the day. It could be anything from doing something like this. I'm fortunate to be invited to speak on panels or give talks in places. Aside from that, I will often spend quite a lot of my day doing research myself. So there'll be something that sparked my interest. So I'll spend some time digging into something that has come up. But then there's also things like we work really, really closely with the engineering team. So part of our remit is actually understanding what is happening on the internet beyond YouTube and helping the engineering team bring those topics, like the conversation of what's happening online, into people's feeds on YouTube. So it's things like on a daily basis, trying to use all sorts of different data sources to see what the conversation is about. And the way it works is we then combine those topics with people's personalized interests. And so that will help feed what appears on their homepage. So that's super interesting, because you're trying to study the internet every day and trying to see what people are talking about. So it does mean that we are the epitome of being chronically online. I've been recently working a little bit with the UK government to try and help them understand what is going on the internet, and for them to understand what the population is most interested in, etc. I've been working with a charity recently that is trying to find positive male voices. After adolescence came out and everybody was absolutely freaking out, understandably, with good reason. A lot of focus has now come through from different organizations of, well, how do we elevate the voices that should be heard, so that young men have, good role models, etc. And luckily, there are many, many wonderful voices like that on YouTube. So I've just been able to work with them to try and help them find the right people and know what the conversation is that's happening online, because I think there can be a lot of alarmism, which again, I'm not dismissing it. I think sometimes that is well placed, but I think the problem is that often people ignore the unbelievable positive sides of online communities, especially for young people, is found to have a positive impact on people's mental health, and especially the young. And there was research that was released in the New York Times and in Forbes last December, I think it was, talking about the same thing, about how for young people, their elevated sense of belonging and community was so much greater through platforms like YouTube that they actually derived more value and more benefit from YouTube than they did from the internet. And we see that play out all the time, because that sense of community and recognition and you belong, and whatever your identity might be, you can find your people, is so strong and has always been part of the platform, that it makes it really heartening and also interesting to be able to dive into and understand like the perspectives of different people around the world who experience life in a different way from you.
Yeah, I can relate so hard to that. When I was a teenager, YouTube was just starting to appear and I was so shy, didn't really have any friends, and I started a YouTube channel and I found my voice and I found my people, and it changed the whole shape of my life
amazing.
And my career.
That's so amazing. Do you still do it?
I don't do it anymore, but I still
on.
watch so much YouTube, and it's always just been such a nice escapism through good times and through bad times. It's always there. You've got your favorite YouTubers, you watch the vlogs. So for me, like, it has a really special place in my heart.
I agree, because actually a lot of people's use of it is that kind of comfort as well. And, you know, people say they have their comfort creators or their comfort channels. I definitely do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I think this is something, again, that is quite particular to YouTube, because it is such an archive and it's not reliant, at least the whole platform. You know, shorts are more of a feed, but then that often leads to people discovering more of long form. But because it is an archive where things just live forever on there, you can go back to watching the same things again and again, or go back to a channel that you really love and go back to old episodes, etc., which is just not how the rest of the internet generally works. And so I think, for a lot of people, it does bring that sense of like calm or enjoyment or whatever it is that you're looking for, whatever your need state might be. You can find something that meets it. So
yeah. From your perspective, how are platforms like YouTube shaping what we define as mainstream culture today? And who's driving that change? The creators, the audience, or the algorithm?
We have shifted inadvertently, because we're a platform, not a publisher. So it's the creators have really shifted people's ideas of entertainment so massively. But what I find really interesting, I don't know if you saw a few months ago, Mr. Beast, biggest YouTube creator, was on the cover of Time magazine as being the most watched person in the world. And yet there are a lot of people in the world who probably don't know who he is and haven't watched any of his stuff. So it's kind of a strange time to be in the world of entertainment, because there are still a lot of people who haven't really grasped, and I don't mean this negatively against them, that people have limited time and they might not have time to watch all this stuff, but for some people, they still struggle to acknowledge that people who become famous on the internet have a legitimate place in entertainment. The influence and the fandoms around these creators are so gargantuan that to ignore them, it's at your peril. What has been just so intriguing to watch as someone who's on the sidelines as a researcher is just seeing how like the democratization of entertainment has really unfolded, in that things that people never would have imagined would have become popular. And so instead of having the traditional gatekeepers who were the magazine editors or the radio producers or whatever, who were deciding what was cool or what was popular, suddenly it was people powered. That I find so thrilling, because I think we see just a whole new world.
What's exciting you most about the future of creator-led content, especially when it comes to long form versus short-term storytelling?
There's so much that is really, really exciting right now. I think for me, what has been the most interesting over, I'd say, the last year is seeing the increase again in like participative content. When YouTube first started, it was all UGC and just random stuff. I mean, it was our 20th anniversary this year, and we were looking at what the YouTube homepage looked like on the first day. On the homepage was like just a series of random home videos of people. Like someone had put up a video of the otters at in New York Zoo, and it had 6 views or something like. So it was all like just really random UGC content. We then went on this bit of a journey where kind of the birth of the creator happened, and being completely transparent, we were like, oh God, how are we going to compete with TV? Maybe we need to professionalize this a bit. And it became more of a domain of people who belonged, who were professional YouTubers. And I think what has really started happening over the maybe longer than the last year, and undoubtedly impacted by the rise and popularity of TikTok. But because they undoubtedly brought back that element of whoever you are, just you have a right to upload stuff, that behavior has started coming back across all sorts of different platforms, but we've definitely started seeing it happening on YouTube again, largely because of the release of shorts, but we used to see it in long form as well. But it's really coming back. And I love that feeling. We've always been, YouTube is a place for everyone is welcome. But we're really seeing that core value coming through again. Mm-hmm. And I love that is normalizing just everybody being in the conversation again. As for the distinction between long form and short form, I think I love both. Mm-hmm. And I think it very much depends on the mood that I'm in. And I think sometimes people make assumptions that younger audiences prefer short form, and often we disparage younger people and say, oh, they have no attention span, etc. But actually that doesn't play out in our data. A lot of them are watching longer form content. And actually there was some research that came out recently that said in the last year, the watch time on longer form content, so pieces over 20 minutes long, for people under the age of 24 had increased by 10%. So it's going in that direction. Yeah. And we asked a survey that we ran with Ipsos. We asked people under the age of 24 if they had 30 minutes spare, would they prefer to watch one piece of content that was 30 minutes long or a series of pieces of content that was short? And more than double said they wanted to watch the long form piece. What often happens is people, open their phone and or actually a lot of people watch shorts on their TV as well now. But they'll open it and they'll be like, oh, I'll only watch for 5 minutes. And then it turns into 30 minutes. So the intention and what the reality is sometimes that there's a disconnect. But I do really see, and we see all the time, young people engaging with longer form. I think what's particular to us on YouTube and what I enjoy is that because you can find every different kind of format in one place, there's a really symbiotic relationship between long form and short form. So many creators have really successfully uploaded a short form kind of teaser that then draws a lot of people to their longer form. And in many cases, actually, they're finding a whole new audience that way. But in the same way that actually long pieces of content, then sometimes you get memes that come off them that spur a whole new world of creativity that is just really exciting. There are so many formats that you can use, and people do use very effectively, in that podcasts as a phenomenon are growing so rapidly, and you see all kinds of new voices there. And again, the fastest growing audiences, but also hosts on YouTube are actually younger people now in podcasts and women, and that's quite different from the world of podcasting 10 years ago, which was largely occupied by older straight white men. And so now to see this flourishing of different voices, I think is really, really important and really exciting. I think it's that, and people can live stream on YouTube. So there's so many different ways of engaging with your audience that, depending on what they're feeling like consuming, you can catch them in different moments. And I think that's what makes it a pretty effective platform as a creator, but also as a user. You're able to flip between different formats, whatever kind of mood you're in.
I think for me, having worked in influence marketing for a long time, we've always done a lot more TikTok and YouTube. We're always being told that people have really short attention spans, but now we're starting to see a shift, and a lot of clients are asking us about YouTube and the storytelling aspect of it to get kind of deeper messaging through to consumers.
That's really interesting. And I think we are beginning to see that. I think people appreciated it at the beginning, and then there was, of course, and I'm not, disparaging TikTok, but it was exciting and shiny new thing. And And it is exciting, and I do love it. But I do think for deep storytelling, there really is nothing like YouTube. The ability to get proper engagement is so different, and it plays out in all sorts of things. Like again, third-party research recently that came out that people trust YouTube creators far more than any other creators on other platforms, and far more than celebrities, far more than politicians, far more than figures of authority, because that deep connection, exactly as you said, that people are able to make with the creators on the platform because of the long form storytelling is really, really different. And I think in many cases, because you're choosing to watch it rather than it being a feed, you also know who that creator is, like their name. There's other research which, when I think about it for myself, so much research about how on other platforms people don't know the names of their favorite creators. They recognize them when they come up in their feed, but actually on YouTube you're seeking out your favorite creators, so you absolutely do know them, and you've been able to create a connection where you know them in a very different way. So I do think, and you see that definitely with branded collaborations for sure, to be associated with that level of deep connection is really powerful.
Yeah. So do you think the line between creator and brand is blurring? Are we moving towards a future where brands are expected to behave more like creators themselves?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It plays out actually in a lot of the data. People's expectations are that brands really get it now. And I think some really do. A lot of creators actually become brands themselves. Some obviously they sell their normal merch, but a lot of people actually launch whole products. And so I think there is a real blurring of those lines, but there's also, a lot of creators do brilliant collaborations with different brands. Like one of the most interesting ones I saw was when a couple of years ago, I think it was, Emma Chamberlain collaborated with Louis Vuitton. And for me, that just was so eye-opening, because she had a reputation of being this really kind of raw creator, showing herself all the time on screen with no makeup, greasy hair, burping, farting, whatever, talking about her spots and how annoying they were. She started when she was 16, probably in a similar way to you, didn't think it was going to be a thing. She just wanted something to do, and then became so popular. I think she's got over 15 million subscribers now. But for Louis Vuitton, this unbelievably kind of traditional heritage French fashion brand, to collaborate with her, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. But actually, it worked really, really well for both of them. It gave them real legitimacy because it was something so fresh and so different from them, and they were able to elevate themselves to be a consideration set of people, a whole new swathe of potential buyers. And for her, it suddenly made her seem like she made it. She already, of course, had success with different things, but I think because that was such a significant one and such a different one, it brought a whole new perspective to people on what she was doing, and it also made people realize that actually this whole conversation that had been going on for a very long time about what is quality and what does it mean, and it's so true that it is in the eye of the beholder. And for people to look at somebody like Emma Chamberlain and in the past have said, but is that good content? Yes, it is. It absolutely is. It's super entertaining. And for her audience, it really, really hit the mark. There is a real blurring of the lines. And you see sometimes it can come out in all sorts of different ways, like I said, of either creators launching their own brand or collaborating with a brand. There was, up until recently, this really interesting collaboration that I saw with UK creators, Beta Squad, who I love. I think they're really, really funny. And they were given the partnership with Foot Asylum, the shop that sells amazing trainers. And what they did was, instead of collaborating so that the creators would be talking about their trainers and pushing trainers, they actually just hosted those creators on the Foot Asylum channel and allowed them to do whatever they wanted. And so they were just chatting and doing, daft but very funny kind of discussions about things that were important to young people, and weren't talking about trainers at all. But actually, the association for the audience between their favorite creators and this brand was so strong that it then really helped establish Foot Asylum, which was, obviously already a really good shop, but established it in the minds of younger people as being cool and being edgy, being interesting. And so you see this happen in so many different ways. As for brands acting like creators, I really do think that's just going to become the norm. We had a really interesting example of it recently, where Wimbledon, again, like a very, in many people's minds, very traditional institution, actually for the last few years, but they went hard on it this year, they were creating a lot of content that felt creator-led. It was creator-led. They had a creator who already made content on her own channel, but they had her making content on their behalf, just talking about the other aspects of Wimbledon, like the fashion, etc. In terms of driving engagement, it was really, really effective. And again, Wimbledon undoubtedly knows that they need to continue to appeal to younger people always, because their tickets to get there are so expensive and inaccessible for a lot of people, that they need to find an audience in different ways and find engagement and hope that the young people who they engage when they're at this point then go on to aspire to want to go to it in the future. And they did it really, really well. And so I think, we're going to see that happening across the board with probably a lot of brands that you wouldn't even imagine. Like, it can happen in different ways where it's the brand is leading it, but you also, of course, see it where brands jump on trends that are happening and bring a whole new perspective to them as an organization, because they are seen as reflecting, cultural relevance.
Roya, we're on to the final two questions.
Oh my goodness.
So this is obviously going to be a tricky one for you, but if you had to give me one favorite book or podcast that you'd recommend, what would you say?
A book that I found really helpful was a book called Status Anxiety by Alain de Botton, who runs the School of Life. Brilliant YouTube channel. What's really led me for most of my life is, if I think something is going to be interesting enough, and I always have this thought of, when I'm a granny, what will I look back on? And it's not going to be things that are, about opulence and wealth. It's going to be about meaningful experiences. And Status Anxiety, the book really unpacks that and tries to give a bit of a kind of reimagining of, late stage capitalism, and how to kind of deal with the way that we are encouraged to think about status, and actually realizing that a lot of it is nonsense, and it's quite liberating as a book. And I think Alain de Botton is a fascinating person anyway, and I like the School of Life, but yeah, I think that's a really good book.
And then final question, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the one recently that has really shifted my mindset, I was reading about how when you are thinking, oh gosh, I have to do something, I have to take the central line to get here this morning, and it's going to be so hot. Instead of saying I have to, say I get to. And think about what it means. I get to take the Central Line because there is infrastructure in London that allows me to use public transport that many, many other countries don't have. How fortunate am I that I get to cross a big swathe of land And actually it's really convenient and not excessively expensive. And, I have to go to this meeting this afternoon, which it might be quite a tense meeting. I'm imagining there aren't that many tense meetings at work, thank goodness. But I get to because I have a job. How lucky am I? And not only do I have a job that I absolutely love, etc. And so that repositioning my mind, I have found so helpful. Not that I struggled. I've always been a pretty grateful person, but I think that has really, really helped me to feel just much more positive about things that I might not have before. And it's very important for us to have a positive mindset in as much as we can. I don't want to sound like everything's wonderful. It's not, but when you can find the good, it's really helpful.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. Gratitude is so powerful. And we're both really lucky to be in jobs that we love.
Aren't we? Oh, really?
Thanks so much, Roya, for joining us on Connected Thinking.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me. That was great fun. Thank you.
Lovely.